Pete, look, you're changing. I know. I went through exactly the same thing at your age.
No, not exactly.
Peter, these are the years when a man changes into the man he's going to become the rest of his life. Just be careful who you change into. This guy, Flash Thompson, he probably deserved what happened. But just because you can beat him up doesn't give you the right to. Remember, with great power comes great responsibility.
Do you expect me to talk?
Hello, and welcome to episode 185 of Do You Expect Us to Talk? I'm your host, as always, Becca, and joined by my fellow co-hosts Chris and Dave. How are you doing?
Swinging into action, thank you.
Chris is a swinger.
It's a swinger, baby. We're not even doing Austin Powers. This is crazy.
He's out tonight as well. We don't know what. I don't know what that's about now.
But yes, anyway, as you may have guessed, we're on to a new review series.
Yes, new series. Sorry, Becca, go on.
Dear oh dear, sorry, I'm getting all kinds of wrong this time.
So yeah, you caught on my web of puns, aren't you?
I am.
I'll stop now.
We're going to do like all the spider puns, all the insect puns, all the silly spider jokes.
Yeah, I didn't mean to bug our audience with it, yeah.
But let's not get any sticky situations. But yes, we do start a new review series, starting with Marvel's Spider-Man. So today we kick off with 2002 Spider-Man movie, starring Tobey Maguire, Kirsten Dunst, James Franco, Willem Dafoe, J.K. Simmons, Rosemary Harris, Cliff Robertson, and Bill Nunn, and also starring, before they were even more famous than they are now, Octavia Spencer and Elizabeth Banks, plus cameos from Macy Gray, Macho Man Randy Savage, Bruce Campbell, and Lucy Lawless. Original score by Danny Elfman. Obviously Spider-Man created by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, with screenplay by David Koepp, Whatever Happened to Him, directed by Sam Raimi and released in 2002.
Well, he wrote Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Yeah, I think that's what happened to him.
Strangely, I don't think his cachet's been quite the same since.
But no, he had like a really what I think was a glittering career in the sort of late 90s. Well, certainly from the mid 90s. Obviously, contributed to the writing of Jurassic Park. So from like the mid late 90s all the way through to kind of like the mid 2000s, he kind of wrote a lot of the major screenplays. Yeah. And then there was some controversy. Well, then he wrote Indiana Jones, and that was it. Yeah,
but he moved into directing because the following year he did Ghost World with Ricky Gervais.
Oh, of course he did. Yes, that's true.
A bit like Nolan's director of photography was Wally Pfister.
So
he went and did like Transcendence or whatever that film was called that got shitty reviews, and I don't think we've heard of him since.
No. He does mostly TV stuff, I think now.
Yeah, I mean, he might be perfectly happy with his career, and frankly, if he never did anything else, Wally Pfister had a hell of a career, and so did David Koepp, to be fair.
Definitely. I'm really mispronouncing all kinds of names, so thanks for bearing with us.
We talked about it during Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull episode we did, that anyone would have struggled to do a very good script to that film, because George Lucas sort of laid out the story and just boxed him in, if you know what I mean. It's got to have this, in this, And
literally he had a tick box, didn't he?
Yeah, once you've got so many criteria you have to hit, it's difficult.
Like a Mills funeral or Bond, tick box exercise.
This was back in its sort of in his peak era, if you like. In terms of the casting of the film, at the point where he was named Tobey Maguire, I'd not heard of him. But between announcement and starting filming, which was early 2001, I saw him in the Michael Douglas film Wonder Boys.
Oh yeah, that's a good film.
Which is a Curtis Hanson film, guy who made LA Confidential, probably the best film of the 1990s, or best mainstream film of the 1990s. And So I didn't know what to expect. Then he appeared in Wonder Boys, but that's very, very much a Michael Douglas film. Rosemary Harris is the mother of Jennifer Ely, who was in Pride and Prejudice. She first came to my attention when I was about 14, and she was in the Chamomile Lawn and frequently naked in it. So I always remembered her. Tara Fitzgerald was in that, and Gustav Graves was in that.
Yes, Toby Stevens.
Toby Stevens, yeah.
It's sort of like a costume drama.
Yeah.
Sort of favourite really.
You can't kill my dreams, Mr. Bond. But my dreams can kill you.
Yeah. When he was on the set of all these old classics, I bet he was hoping one day he'd get to deliver dialogue like that.
And now he plays James Bond, so look how things come around.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about the cast as we go through. A small part in this to Joe Manganiello, who's probably still best known for he had a
Marrying
role.
Sofia Vergara.
No, but I forgot about that. But
He's like the richest lady on American TV.
Well, to be fair,
right,
I've never seen any of that. I've only really seen her in Chef. But Joe Manganiello was in what's it called, True Blood, for a number of years, and he's also, was it Deathstroke, in a cameo at the end of DC film, and of course that he was going to be one of the sort of villain stroke anti-hero depending on the film. And of course, that all went out the window with the rest of Zack Snyder's vision. But we'll get to the whole DC thing another time. Yeah,
it's all a bit up in the air at the moment, isn't it? Really,
it's all a bit up in the air now because again, people have become very poor at discerning clickbait from a decent rumor. Because there was one site the other day that actually claimed Affleck was back on board as Batman in some deal with HBO Max, but that same site a few days before had claimed that the most recent Star Wars trilogy was going to be written out of continuity. So it's full of shit as a site. It's up there with a "we got this covered" type site. So we don't know, but yeah, Sam Raimi was announced as the director. At that point, I knew him from the Evil Dead films. Evil Dead 2 particularly gave me hope. Now, for those who are listening to this that haven't seen the Evil Dead films, you think, hang on, horror? How does that go with this sort of, day-glow Spider-Man interpretation? But if you actually look at the camera work and the sort of subversive sense of humour in those films, particularly the second one, and then go and watch something like Spider-Man 2, where he's off the leash a bit more, but it's very Sam Raimi. He was selected.
The two match up really well.
Selected because not only a big Spider-Man fan, but a big comic book fan in general. 25,000 comic books he had in his collection at that point. That's it from me, other than just to say I was living in Birmingham at the time. I saw it opening night. I can't think of many films in my life I was more excited for. Something about Spider-Man coming to life. And we're used to it now, and we take it for granted with the Marvel Cinematic Universe and that, but this was something else. It felt like a comic book come to life. Even sort of the raised webbing on his suit, it just looked expensive and impressive and stylized and really good. And all we'd had before this was the X-Men, really, and Blade. I mean, we'd had Superman, but they'd not been made for quite a long time, and they'd been diminishing returns anyway. Then you'd had Blade, which was very sort of adult anyway. And the only thing we'd had was X-Men. But if you think back to the earliest X-Men film, and we'll cover the X-Men films at some point, they were very sort of leathers and denims. They weren't really playing up to their comic book origins, and didn't until we got to something like First Class, which is a full 9 years after this. So yeah, that's me with it. What about you guys?
Becca?
So yeah, I went and saw this back in 2002, and for various reasons probably haven't seen it since. Yeah, it's one of those things. I'm also like comic book films since the Marvel series kind of like regenerated probably about 10 years ago. But for me, this is like one of the aside from the X-Men movies, which I've enjoyed, and Superman, of course, and then obviously growing up with the Batman movies and in the 90s. And
how could I forget the Batman movies? But to be fair, and
the Batman movies.
two of the three 90s ones were shit.
They were definitely, but this is kind of like of the sort of modern era, as I call it, sort of from the 2000s. This is probably like the first major superhero release. I think I remember at the time there was quite a lot being made about Tobey Maguire and James Franco, for example, who were kind of like into their late 20s, early 30s maybe, playing sort of meant to be teenagers essentially, or like high school students sort of thing. But I think they do it convincingly. It doesn't really matter. Also, I think for me in this film, like the standouts would probably be obviously J.K. Simmons, who's still carries on his role as Jameson, to this day. If he has to reprise the role, then he's the man for the job. And also Willem Dafoe as well. I don't think he was the first choice to be cast as Green Goblin, but he really makes the role his own, and he has. I was going to go out there and say he's got like really expressive face for it. That sounds really horrible, but he has such unique, sort of unique features, and he's got the acting chops for it as well. He's got the talent to kind of really make it his own, without appearing as a pantomime villain, I will say.
Although I've always thought he was born to play the Joker.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good shout.
You definitely see it when you see like pictures of him like sort of done up as if he is playing the Joker, like superficial. You think like
the makeup on.
It jumps straight out the comic books, doesn't it? It's just like yeah.
It really does.
The closest you'll get to like a live action version of like Mark Hamill's Joker.
Definitely, that's a good point actually.
Which I'm not as in love with as some people, but anyway, yeah.
That's pretty much my experience. Obviously saw these films at the cinema. I think I gave the third one maybe a wide berth because it was terrible. But the second film I remember loving upon release. So I'm really looking forward to revisiting that one. And obviously we'll discuss that in more detail next time. But yeah, that was my brief experience with this film. Really enjoyed it. Upon watching it again today, I was like checking my watch a few times and it's just quite long. It's 2 hours, so I think the first kind of hour or so really did skip by. But for me, it just dragged a little bit during the second half. But no, I think the choice, the creative choice in having that kind of like the father-son kind of a dynamic as well really helps to make it more grounded and adds like a human edge to a fantastical comic book movie. But no, I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to getting back into the series. Chris, what did you make of it?
Yeah, I think you kind of have to think of it like of its time really, because I remember this was quite. This film was really hyped when it came out. Everyone was, from in my social circles anyway, was really sort of like excited and praising film, and it was almost like perfect. And what kind of struck me with this viewing is like, how would this pass today? Like if this film was like released like as it is like in today's climate, how would this sit well? At the chance that it would probably get about sort of very middling, if not like 2-star reviews kind of thing, because it is very kind of campy and basic, and very cartoonish as well. If by today's standards, it's very sort of. I think you said before, Dave, before recording, off air, like a naive kind of worldview, but I think it's just very simplistic and very just, I suppose naive, really.
Right, yeah. You're right to say of its time for many reasons, and some of them we'll get into as we go through it. But the stylized nature of the film is doing most of the heavy lifting. In that it at least looks somewhat comic book faithful. I mean, the Green Goblin sort of isn't, and there are things about the characterization of particularly Spider-Man himself rather than Peter Parker that isn't, up with the most common interpretations of the character. But on a purely visual level, even down to teaser trailers and the close-ups of him and the teaser poster with the eyes. I know that was the Twin Towers and that got withdrawn, but in the earliest trailers, you got sort of a close-up of him like that, and you get it just after he'd become Spider-Man. And I think you've just got to do a bit more with it now, whereas this is just a simplistic origin story. The problem with origin stories are always that you try and cram. You try to do the origin story in the first. I quite like origin stories sometimes, but if they've got a consistent flaw, you've got an hour. The first hour of the film, 40 minutes, depends on the film, is like the origin bit, and then they try to cram essentially a full superhero film into the second hour, and it can look a bit clumsy and sometimes a little bit perfunctory, that like the film just existed for us to get to the default superhero status quo, if you like. But down to having, I mean, I was watching the scene where before Peter comes home, where Aunt May and Uncle Ben are just talking. He's just lost his job, and I'm looking at it and going, that's Silver Age Spider-Man. That is the sort of 60s version of Spider-Man. You know, obviously Spider-Man's not in that scene, but just the characterization of May. I mean, she's progressively got younger and hotter since this film. Aunt May will be about 19 in the next iteration.
Yeah, if you're a 25-year-old, like, you know...
I mean, to be fair, Marissa Tomei's actually now in her mid-50s, but obviously she doesn't really play like that, and she is, like, really attractive woman. This is much more the sort of surrogate grandmother figure. I've got some issues with casting as we go through it, but it's good for what it is. If in an alternate universe they'd have done like 5 of these, all to sort of the standard of somewhere around the second film, and it would stand out as really, really great. For us, a lot of people, Tobey Maguire is their Spider-Man. I understand that, nostalgia and everything else. When we get into like what we think of the film in a minute, I might talk a little bit more about him. But whatever I say about him will be sort of almost confined, apart from a couple of scenes, to this film, in that I'm not going to give you 3 2-hour episodes of me complaining about Tobey Maguire. when I have something to say about him, it'll just be, okay, park that and talk about the films thereafter. What did you actually think of the films then, Chris? Have you kind of already alluded to it, that kind of it's a little bit simplistic?
I think, like you say, in terms of, like, you know, I do like a good origin story, but I think the tendency is also, because the natural way to do origin would be like, well, it would only be like in the final act where he actually is Spider-Man and swing, you know, or the flash shot is him finally being the Spider-Man that we know now. But the problem is you kind of have to like rush things through a little bit. But one of the things I thought was actually what the film actually does well, apart from any story aspect, is it's actually quite well paced. I mean, I was checking like sort of times where we are. He gets bit by the spider about 15 minutes in, and about like sort of just shy of 30 minutes in, he's like discovering his powers. So it uses its time efficiently well to kind of get into like the action sort of elements of it. And one of the comment I was going to point out, like I think you've alluded to before, was out of all the Spider-Man versions I've seen, they all have this to a degree. But this one actually really names the fact that he struggles with his social life, which not many superheroes actually do as well. You know, like, they don't really sort of press on the fact that, you know, as hard as, like, well, you know, going around doing the superhero
he's
stuff.
actually not a super popular kid in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's like, well, everything else has to suffer, like your social life suffer. You know, you can imagine yourself if you were actually having to do this because you've, you know, having to like sort of go around and save people, you would lose friends, wouldn't you? You'd be like, oh, you weren't here for this important thing. Well, I'm sorry, I had to go, and you can't.
But
you
not
can't,
only that, he's the cleverest kid in class.
Yeah.
And if you think back to school and the cleverest kid in your class, they were never the most popular. It's a sad statement on the way of the world, but it is just the way things are. So he's not a super popular kid. He gets excited about things that other kids don't get that excited about. And so he doesn't have that good a social life. And then next week, as he's been Spider-Man for a bit longer, he's struggling to get to things, and he's struggling to, like, prioritize himself in any way. And that'll include the things he's supposed to be doing at college and stuff. So, yeah, it does do that very well.
I don't... Sorry, go on.
Sorry, go on.
No, well, the only thing I will say, like, the one, I'm not sure that these films as a whole, I'm not even sure maybe I'm wrong and we'll get to it and they do, but because I'm just maybe can't remember. But like one of the thoughts I had is like the line of great power comes great responsibility, and I was thinking, part of me I was thinking a bit of like the Nolan Batman films where it's like the world needs Bruce Wayne, not Batman. And I was thinking, well, there's other parts of you that the world needs, as in like you're a brilliant scientist, rather than just swinging around saving people because you got these powers. Do you know what I mean? There's also that element you could sort of. I don't think they actually properly utilise. Do you know what I mean in terms of the power and responsibility, the more human aspect.
Funny as hell when we get to the first reboot, which is the 4th episode of our series. They torture themselves to avoid saying that line.
Yeah.
And the line they
do go out of their way to avoid it, don't they? Just think, all right, don't say it, don't say it.
The line they come out with instead. I remember watching Sarah Palin once give a speech or something when like the auto cue failed, she just had to like talk, and it was just utter fucking horseshit. Everything out of her mouth. Forget her values and her politics. I just mean how she coped with the situation.
It was a cringe moment.
It was
wasn't
like
it?
that. Well, I suppose what I'm trying to say is it's a bit like
like Sarah Palin.
They definitely. They do elements in the 3 different iterations of Spider-Man very differently. I think they went a little bit too cool with the Andrew Garfield version. Whether the type of nerd Tobey Maguire is portraying actually existed by 2002, I don't know. It's almost like when you watch The Big Bang Theory, and whatever you think of that sitcom, the characterization in it is like. It's as though it's written by somebody who's never actually met anyone like that, and they're just going off some vague idea they've got about what those people might be like. And there's a bit of that in this. I don't think Sam Raimi or David Koepp grew up the nerdy outsider, judging by the way they've characterized Peter Parker.
It's sort of like a comic book movie trope, isn't it? I mean, it's similar. Well, it's like opposite of Superman, for example. Version. So, yeah. But yeah, it's a kind of like a well-worn path now within superheroes. Is that kind of like this? You know, I think this incredible figure must have kind of like a nerdy or socially. What's the word I'm looking for? Socially inept. Sort of alter ego, really. So. Socially awkward is the word I'm looking for.
I mean, as for me, the only bit I need to add, because we're going on a little bit, and Becca needs to say what she thinks in a minute of it.
I've said it already, sorry.
Have you? Okay. I liked it, but I felt a little bit about it at the time, the way I did coming out of the 1989 Batman film. Because there is sometimes a level of hype on a film. I had no excuse with Spider-Man because I was an adult by the time it came out. But certainly when Batman came out, I wasn't even yet 13. I was only 12 when it came out. And you go in ready to be absolutely blown away by something. And as stylish as the 1989 Batman was, and I do like it, I wasn't blown away by it. I was just like, yeah, it's pretty good. And I felt that way about this film. But I was very grateful for it. And what this film gave me that I've never had since is that almost pinch yourself feeling of, I can't believe I'm watching this. Like a Spider-Man come to life, because all we had, I imagine some people in 1989 felt like that about Batman, although it wasn't as comic book accurate. But all we'd had is the 1970s. Well, we'd had the cartoons, and we'd had various iterations of the cartoons. The first one I came across was the early 80s one, and that was the same Spider-Man that was in Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. And the 90s cartoon was really good. I mean, again, it wasn't quite my era, but objectively I thought it was better. But the only other thing we'd had was the 1970s TV series, which sort of started with a double episode which got a theatrical release in some areas, starring Nicholas Hammond, who was I think the eldest of the Von Trapp children. And also we saw him last year playing Sam Wanamaker in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but he was almost unrecognizable. The scene in the trailer where Leo is like dipping his face in ice water and stuff like that because he's got a film and he got drunk the night before. That's who he's talking to there.
All
but
connected.
But it was a TV budget, so even compared to like Christopher Reeve's Superman outfit, the outfit looked crap and ill-fitting. The webs used to sort of
like ropes.
They used to come out as ropes that sort of flipped out. You could see it, and it was all the same things. You'd have him climbing up a wall, which obviously wasn't a wall, and sort of looking down underneath himself. So they reused a lot of assets in it. J. Jonah Jameson is nothing like the comic book J. Jonah Jameson. and it's just not very good. So there was an element of pinch yourself when you watch this, whatever its modern effect. When I watch it now, let's get this bit out the way and not touch it too much after this. I hate Tobey Maguire in this role. Some of it's him, some of it's the writing, because he's almost mute in the suit. I'm a
It rhymes.
I don't know it. And when he does come out with one-liners like with Bonesaw, they're piss weak. I always thought of Spider-Man as like literally his alter ego. He jokes a bit because he's nervous, and he jokes a bit because he's a little bit socially awkward in real life, and that frees him up to be a bit more him. And it was weak. He's got this weird sort of croaky Zooey Deschanel voice. He literally sounds like Zooey Deschanel. When he cries, he looks like a Harry Enfield character. His whole tone of voice sounds like a whine. And I'm now at the point I don't want to watch Tobey Maguire in anything. He's just a fundamentally annoying screen presence. I fucking hate him in this role. And the fact that when he is the more relatable side of the duology, i.e. Peter Parker, he's such a stereotype of a 1960s view of a nerd that I can't connect to him. He's borderline creepy around Mary Jane. And it doesn't help I'm not a James Franco fan either. So I do have issues with casting in this film. That's the biggest thing that stops this being my Spider-Man, apart from the fact Marvel have fucking nailed it now. And we finally got a definitive, that is now my Spider-Man and my Peter Parker, in the same way that Christopher Reeve is a lot of people's Superman and so on. If anything was to stop these films being great, I would have you could replace Tobey Maguire with almost any other eligible candidate, and I'd prefer these films to what I feel about them now.
I think one of the problems is the film itself tends to lionize Peter Parker in this a little bit too much. Like you just tell the whole it seems to portrays him as a misunderstood great man a bit too much. The way Mary Jane especially falls in love with him, even though we don't really know why. I mean, you kind of buy that she's just a nice person, and it's probably one of the people who wasn't just a dick to him. But then why does she actually fall in love with him? It's just a bit there's just something creepy about it, because she clearly comes from some kind of abusive home, and then like a lot of abused people, she happens straight into something with somebody who clearly doesn't treat her very well. Flash Thompson, as characterized in this version of the universe, Joe Manganiello, who just looks ludicrously too old for the role. Looks nothing like Joe Manganiello, surprisingly.
Well, it's mainly because his hair's shorter and he's
Not
grey
got a beard.
now and stuff. Yeah, Joe Manganiello, as sort of... some people are born to be a certain age, and I always feel like he was born to be in his 40s. But he does look too old for the role here. Toby looks well too old for the role. Kirsten Dunst not particularly, but then she's only about 19 when they're filming this, maybe even 18 for a lot of the filming. James Franco, I'm not quite sure how old he was, but yeah, most of them look too old. But there we go. Anyway, so I didn't have a bad time with it.
Yeah, I think it flows very well. I mean, I'll just wrap up what I generally think. I think it flows very well. I think that's probably what the main strength and why people enjoy it. I think it's. I think I established it was comic book movies were still relatively new. It was just Superman and Batman, and I think no one really
and X-Men. But obviously, bear in mind, X-Men won't have been out by the time this was greenlit and written and stuff.
Yeah. So you still had a very kind of not quite sure how to play it. So this kind of ignited a lot of popular coming. We had Hulk coming out and all sorts, and eventually.
Yeah. The following year you had Daredevil. You had the
Daredevil.
Hulk. The year after, you obviously had a sequel to this. You had the X-Men sequel as well.
Fantastic Four. They tried that.
2005, you had Fantastic Four, Batman Begins. Yeah. So the next year you had a new Superman film. Yeah. So it did really open the floodgates. But I
And
think a
then
lot of those
Iron
were
Man came along.
and changed the game completely and left this looking a bit of a relic, but at least it's a pretty relic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of CGI as well.
We'll get into that because their eyes are bigger than their belly at this stage.
That's
They're
one thing
trying
that hasn't
shots
really
like
held
that.
up.
It really hasn't. And the funny thing is, the CG improves in the second film and devolves again for the third, but we'll get there. He's very. It's less the CG in terms of surfaces and that sort of thing. It's more movement. It's very rubbery, isn't it?
Mm.
But we'll get to the scenes where that's the case. Shall we discuss this film sequentially, folks?
Yes, let's. So, we have the main titles, and one of the striking things was like, well, Danny Elfman did the score. Now, while I struggle to kind of think of what the actual theme of the score sounds like, other than just sort of, you know,
It evokes a crawling spider. I think the main theme is quite memorable.
what the main theme. Which is the main theme? I can't. I struggle to think of it. It's like I know it's. I can't think of a definitive tune for it.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm not going to sit and hum it now, but
No.
go and have a listen to it afterwards, and I think you'll recognise it. Once it sticks in your mind, it will stick.
Yeah. So I see. I've got it in my head, but it doesn't sort of. It's not like Batman. Do you know what I mean? Which is.
I kind of agree. I mean, it's a good score. I like Danny Elfman's music in general, but it's one of those scores where, like, you've got the original kind of Spider-Man theme, which they touch upon during this film, and also I think there's a scene in the next film where somebody sings it. But can you hum it? Is it memorable? I watched it today and I'm struggling a little bit, but that's just down to me being a dim person. But yeah, I would agree with you, Chris.
I could hum it. I'm just refusing to.
Go on, Dave. You want to.
Anyway, carry on.
But one of the things it did make me think of, obviously, was Darkman as well, because that was a very Batman-esque, and that was Sam Raimi as well. They're doing
Yeah, actually, I'd forgotten about Darkman. Darkman was 1990, something like that. It was between Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness, and I'd forgotten all about it, but I have seen it. It's Liam Neeson as a guy who's like face melts about every 90 minutes or so.
Yeah.
And but you can still recognise him because of his enormous penis, obviously.
God, I forgot about that.
How do we know it's you, Darkman? We. So he did that. It's a good film. It's less Sam Raimi than the Evil Dead films are, in that there's less of a director stamp on it.
But you can definitely sort of see like the Batman tone here. Sorry, not the Batman, but the Spider-Man tone here. There is parallels. It's like, okay, well, you can tell that this is Sam Raimi toned down, but it's almost like a similar sort of sensibility as Tim Burton when he did Batman films. There's also like an element of gothic. Also, Danny Elfman doing all those.
He's less toned down next week, and that goes right from the first trailer I saw for the second film. But we'll come back to it next week because we'll parallel it to certain shots in the Evil Dead films. Some of it will be actual shots, and some of it will just be generally the way they go about it. Sam Raimi was used to working on small budgets, and he was used to coming up with interesting ways to get shots and interesting movement in shot making, and you only really see it in the second film.
Yes.
Here. And by the third film, there seems to be some sort of dispute with the studio as well. So the second film is the only one that really, really feels him. But so we start with the title sequence. You were saying we keep getting like shots of like a computer generated sort of Spider-Man's hand and the back of his head and stuff like that, really playing him as quite an iconic figure coming to the screen for the first time properly.
Yeah, it's sort of sweeping through the city. You see Goblin mask, which is a bit of an odd sort of design for a military. What supposedly is meant to be like a military project, but yeah. So we get the kind of like, who am I? That kind of old trope of like starting a film.
I know, and what he says is bullshit. If someone said it was a happy little tale, it's just like everything he was saying was like not quite really what we go on to see.
It's a bit naff now, isn't it? It's very much like that old kind of chestnut. I did cringe. I was like, really?
The problem is his voice instantly irritates. I promise I won't do 3 films of I hate Tobey Maguire. I promise. But we're just starting, and like the very first sound of his voice like grated,
It's that kid like a shop assistant from The Simpsons.
Mr.
Mr. Simpson.
Yeah.
I mean, he has finished.
A bit like that.
I like that guy, but not. But yeah, then the first shot of him is running alongside the bus in a pair of what look like National Health specs.
Yeah, they're a little bit Joe 90
That'll mean
class.
nothing to American listeners, but when you were a kid in this country and you needed corrective specs, you used to get these. I don't know if they're free now, but certainly when I was a kid, they were free, and you got them on like the National Health Service, but they were shit and really basic.
Similar to what Michael Caine wore in the Harry Palmer films.
A little bit, yeah. Harry Palmer's
Or Joe 90.
My name is Michael Payne.
That's the one.
Yeah, there were a few different designs, but they were awful, and my heart sank. Literally, I mean, it got better, but 10 seconds into the film, I thought, we're getting like the parody of a nerd, and he has a fucking awful voice. So I did panic to start with. I thought, I don't like where this is going straight away. But it turns out he's getting on a bus to go to...
Gets tripped up, and not even like really odd-looking people want him to sit next to him. He's that unpopular.
Yeah, I mean, the fat kid who's literally sat there stuffing his face won't let him sit down. You think, he doesn't look like he looks like he smells. You're overpaying this outsider business.
And given the fact that he's like his one mate is actually quite sort of rich and good looking.
I know. It's like, well, James Franco's character could just buy friends. He lives in a building that's evocative. It probably is a famous building, but I don't know which building it is. It always reminds me of the Dakota. But when we talking about it being stylized, when the camera pans across Kirsten Dunst's face, her hair billows back slightly, and nobody else on the buses does. It's like stylized as to how he sees
make
her.
her more attractive, and it singles her out as potential love interest. So that's why it happens like that.
It's how he sees her.
As a plot, exactly, as a plot contrivance, but that's why it happens.
It's cool, isn't it? It's a good idea. It's a good little idea.
It just reminds me of that like typical cliche thing, when you sort of like you see someone's face and instantly you fall in love, like doing TV and film stuff. It's like everything just slows down, light shines.
Yeah. It's like that episode of Friends where Denise Richards is like shaking her hair around really slowly. It's that. With like Barry White playing on the soundtrack. So they're off to a university genetics lab, aren't they?
Yeah, which is quite an odd. The teacher's trying to be as an odd choice because he's very young and he talks in very hushed tones. It's very much like, right, kids, we're gonna do things,
I mean, teachers
don't
do
talk
start
at the
teaching
back.
young. I mean, it's not like you can't get a job as a teacher till you're 35, is it?
No,
So
but
it's
it's a very off-ball choice because he's either like the elderly kind of like, right, okay, a bit bored now with the gig, or you have the kind of like more comedic teacher. He's neither of those.
He's kind of an old man in a young's body, actually.
Yeah.
And he's just trying to get them to shut up, and because they are just like, it is real sort of jocks and nerds. This sort of group of people. And Mary Jane sort of is hanging out with the jock side because she feels like she should. Few changes for this version of Spider-Man. The first one is this is not a radioactive spider. It's a genetically engineered one.
Yeah.
And when they're getting a presentation I can't remember the number, but there's meant to be like 14 spiders and there's only 13 there or something. One's got out. But when they're describing the spider, not only does it have Spider-Man's colour palette, but they're describing Spider-Man's skill set, basically.
Yeah, they can go through all these spiders, don't they, and sort of say, oh, a spider can do this. Oh, a spider can do that.
They didn't seem too bothered that one's missing, did they? They're just like, there's one missing. But they're like, yeah, it's fine.
This spider creeps after fucking fit women. And this one's desperate to buy a car.
Who's on your dress? Oh.
Yeah, we get introduced to Harry, because obviously he gets like, he like gets driven in the voice by his dad. So we get introduced to Norman.
Yeah, it's chauffeur driven. He's sat in the back.
Chauffeur driven in a rolls.
And he's a bit embarrassed by it. He's like, drop me around the side. He's like, well, you're right here. Then, of course, Norman Osborn meets Peter Parker and comes quite close to filleting him. So you can see why, like, Harry's a bit put out.
Oh, you like science? Oh, well, I'm a scientist myself.
Let's be bum chums. He doesn't seem to like his son very much, and there is like he's been kicked out a load of schools, which again you think you're going to get like quite a rebellious kid, and he's not really. But then I just think James Franco's a bit weak in the role. He looks okay in a still photo, fairly good-looking guy and all the rest of it, but I've never liked him much as an actor, and I don't like him in this.
Yeah, I think the role itself doesn't like. As you say, yeah, he's like okay, right. He's been kicked out all the private schools and whatever. There doesn't seem to be a rebellious streak. The only thing it seems to be is just like resentment of like, of his dad, or just a bit like embarrassed about his wealth or something, which it's not really like it's a common thing that I suppose every kid. I mean, no one wants to like be seen with their parents like pulled outside the school, do they? Really, that's something everyone has, no matter what background you come from.
Yeah, although it just made me think of the In-Betweeners then, like, it's even worse if your mum's fit or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Total non sequitur, folks, but if you've never seen the In-Betweeners, it's really funny. Yeah, so he's taking photos for the school magazine.
Yeah.
And every time he goes to take a photo with quite an old-fashioned camera, like in the comic books, he's like elbowed and nudged by the like jocks, and they think it's the funniest thing ever. And I'm thinking, you're not very funny.
I mean, yeah, but kids like that do.
I think it's probably because they're about 25 in real life. I'm thinking, sure, it should be funnier than that. You're as funny as the average 13-year-old. In fact, most 13-year-olds are funnier. But anyway. So, yeah, he takes photos of Mary Jane because he needs a student, and she like overacts looking chuffed, and then he gets bitten while he's taking photos of her.
Yeah. And he's Al, and he goes, ow! And then, so at some point, there's Harry. Here's a right confusing thing, because Harry's a bit of a twat in this as well, right? Like, and I'm not quite sure the element. He kind of like goes to Peter when he's like there's MJ, why don't you go and talk to her? So obviously he's aware that that he fancies her, and then he goes like, and he kind of goes shy, goes, okay, well, I'll go and talk to her, and you're kind of thinking like that might encourage him to come along, but obviously what happens later on we'll get to. But
see, later on when he says you never made a move, part of me thinks if you're that good a friend, help him out. If he's that shy, go and talk to her for him or something like that. But no, he just steals his lines and then goes, well, you didn't immediately cop off with her, therefore I'm having her.
Yeah, I mean that's the weird thing, because initially, you're right. You think, I thought, all right, well, I'll talk to her, then introduce you. You know what I mean? And might make it a bit more. But anyway.
So anyway, he goes home now.
Yeah, we see Ben and May.
Yeah, Ben's just lost his job and he's looking for another job at like 68 years of age, which is everything you need to know about the US economy, really. Just like work till you drop. But yeah, very sort of. It's funny because Cliff Robertson was quite a bit older than the character at this point, but they still had to like make him up to look older because he aged so well. Peter comes home and goes straight to bed. We see him without like a shirt on, and he's very, very scrawny. And I did read that was the first thing they shot, and the buff picture in the morning is one of the last ones they shot.
It makes sense, doesn't it?
It's both, yeah, but it's both him. Whereas I've had people try to tell me it's CG in the past, or like head replacement. I don't think head replacement would have looked this good in 2002 anyway.
No, it's not like Captain America.
But it is him. And bear in mind, he's not a Superman afterwards. He's just like toned and quite, well, he's ripped and a bit more muscular, but he's still slender. And he wakes up with superpowers. Don't you just hate it when that happens?
Yeah, don't you just hate it when you wake up all of a sudden you're buff and and everything like sort of annoying, like you got great eyesight now and all the rest of it.
And you just go, that's weird. And smartest kid in the school, and he hasn't put it together that he was bitten by something genetically modified the day before. Anyway, in the interim, we get Norman.
Yes.
Working on something. It's a super soldier formula.
Yes. With a glider.
Now, I don't know if that's literally the super soldier serum, as obviously this is a Marvel property. But anyway. And a glider, yeah. So they're talking about, yeah, but he basically wants to go to human trials, and his sort of sidekick tells him it's not safe.
Yes.
But they're in danger of losing funding, so they have a go anyway.
Yeah, because the military guy who's organising, for some reason just doesn't like Northern Osborn, which is for reasons I'm not sure of. He says like, oh well, it'll be my pleasure to pull it. It's like, why are you hating on him? Like,
Yeah. I mean, this is a contractual arrangement as well.
Yeah.
You've commissioned him to do a piece of work for you. Why do you want him to fuck it up? You've only got to go somewhere else to get someone else to. I don't know. Whatever.
Anyway, so obviously he's pressured into it and feels like, right, well, I'm just going to do it myself, just to kind of like move things along, and it doesn't work out well. So this happens like on the night when like Peter's like in bed, like getting his superpowers and whatnot.
Yeah.
So so he's back at school.
Yeah, he still doesn't catch the bus, but this time his hand sticks to something on the side and rips it off. And this is basically, I don't know what you think, Becca, this appears to be a bit of a sort of metaphor for puberty.
Yeah. Isn't that the whole point of it, though?
Well, I think because he shoots his own webbing and stuff like that, he isn't
Literally
in control of it. Yeah, don't know where it's stored.
In his pants.
In his pants.
I mean, that wouldn't that sort of change, like, his whole body dynamic though as well? Like, his
rather than just going, that's a bit weird. You think you'd see if I suddenly shot webbing out of my wrist now, I'd be straight to like A&E.
Yeah, but like, is there something wrong with you?
Yeah. Is it still safe to be around? Have you got something that's like infectious? Don't know.
It's like when he got bitten by the spider, I was like, would you not go to A&E with that?
Because that kind of like makes the kind of, I know this the always aspect where it comes to like superior powers and whatnot, but surely that just starts opening up. Is he going to end up like Morphine's going to end up having like other limbs growing out of him now?
Is it going to be like The Fly?
Yeah, does he transform into an actual
the Jeff Goldblum remake where he's slowly sort of changed? Yeah.
Or one of those like like a werewolf movie, for example, or as you say, like The Fly. But no, it goes backwards.
Yeah, this obviously, as you'll know from Marvel and everything else, and those who know Spider-Man will know this. This is probably the only incarnation where it was organic. The web shooters, they did copy it in the comics for about 4 or 5 years, I think. But obviously, we've gone back to. I quite liked it as an idea at the time. Less so now.
Yeah.
I think that changed, didn't it, as going on? Because first of all, it was organic, and then he kind of had some device that shot webs out.
Sam Raimi said that he didn't think it was realistic to have some kid making this webbing that like 3M can't even do.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
Like, well, that's half the fucking point, surely.
Because it is organic and it's natural, I guess. For
yeah, but the other thing,
I mean, that's probably not the right word.
The other thing, though, is, I mean, I know you get a bit of it into because of his like faith and all the rest of it, but there's something about when you've got web shooters, you don't know quite when they're going to run out and things like that, and you can
that's
find
it.
yourself.
How does he know?
Yeah.
I with the organic one, it's a bit.
There's like, oh shit, I've not got it today, or for whatever reason. Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh, it's like an extra challenge.
I don't like it as much, but I liked it at the time, and it's a fair enough take on it. I think it's okay.
I think also a lot of what does help it's another thing you don't have to explain. It's like, right, fine, he's got it. Move on. Do you know what I mean? You don't have to like add in another story point of him.
No, it's not that. And again, it's playing up that sort of puberty angle because he's not in control of his sort of changing body, if you like.
No, it just take him a while to master, doesn't it? It'll be interesting as we do this series. It'll be interesting to compare and contrast like how that's represented as well, because obviously he is a teenager, and he's meant to be going through these changes, as we all know. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how like the next 2 or 3 iterations.
Well, the Garfield version is web shooters, isn't it? So
yeah, it's the same.
Okay, so so he goes to lunch, where he's deeply unpopular still, like everywhere. Mary Jane falls and he catches her and catches all her food on the tray, which he did for real in about 100 odd takes. Then he sort of, the food tray catches to his wrist or something, and he accidentally flips it behind him and hits Flash with it, and it leads to a fist fight that I think would raise eyebrows, don't you? When he's doing like triple jumps in the air and stuff like that. But the bit where Flash's fist is moving slowly and his face is moving at normal speed, I think is a good visual.
I think if we didn't have the Matrix, we wouldn't have this scene. We wouldn't have had half the stunts in this film. I think the Matrix has got a lot to answer for, definitely, because it's very much when I saw those stunts, that's kind of where my mind went, and that you can kind of see a through line and that kind of like CGI and bullet time, arm time. So definitely, I think there's definitely a kind of a big influence there, which of course is hugely influenced by sort of by comic book movies and those kind of stories. But yeah, I think it just reminded me of the Matrix a lot, which is very cool. But I like those effects; they're very neatly done. And obviously, this film, as you said at the top of the show, Chris, is very much of its time. A lot of the CGI does hold up, but there's also quite an awful lot that doesn't. This is one of the few effects I thought did hold up pretty well.
It's that physics engine, isn't it? That physics program.
It is, definitely.
I think it does a good... I think what it does right is at the very beginning where it kind of like... It sort of like has a sort of sense of where everything is in the area. You see the paper plane, you see someone like find a spit. You get a sense of everything come around, and you finally get to the fist launching straight at him. So you get the sense of, that of his Spidey sense. You get the or as Peter Tingle as I say.
Yeah, it's done well in this iteration. Although
it's the only time it's used though.
He's got it when he. Well, yeah, apart from in the Avengers where like his hair stood up and stuff. I can't remember if it's in the Garfield version. We'll obviously find out again in a couple of weeks. It's a bit inconsistent because sometimes he doesn't seem to have it. Certainly in the third film, but then Venom, I think the symbiote blocks his Spidey sense anyway. But there are inconsistencies with it. But yeah, he goes home and has a chat with Mary Jane across like the school, the fence, because she lives next door.
I think there's a scene where you can literally see her from his window. I think that's a bit pervy. I know it's not meant to be, but I just thought...
It's more he's going on about how wonderful she was in the school play age 6. You might as well just say, I've been, thinking of nothing but you for like 15 years. Well, I suppose 10, 12 years. I don't know how old he's meant to be. They're towards the end of school, aren't they? So 18, probably. Although Tobey Maguire's about 26 at this point. I thought this conversation was creepy and goes on too long, and there's a few of those in the Tobey Maguire run where they just belabor conversations too long. There's a couple of fucking doozies in the third film, and there's one in the second as well. But so Flash turns up in a car. So Peter suddenly thinks, I need a car.
In a flashy car.
I don't know what I think of that. There's a part of me that thinks how wonderfully naive that you think that would solve all your problems. She's only with him for the car, and if you got a car and she left him for you, that would make her.
I think it's like competing for it, isn't it? It's like,
yeah.
He's trying to kind of be that level. He kind of thinks, okay, that's the kind of guy I need to be, and then that's kind of like where he needs to be. But it's just sort of things you do. If you're a teen, aren't you? You kind of think, oh, you must have this, or you must have that, or you must tick this box.
Though it's odd how the film never really addresses how he's choosing to, because after this he sort of spots like an ad for the wrestling gig. It's like for whatever amount of money, and he makes like designs and like sort of for the Spider-Man outfit, but it's weird how the film doesn't address like just after establishing that his aunt and uncle are on hard times, and I'm like, I'm going to win all this money just so I can buy a car. You think like, how about?
Yeah, I think hold on a minute.
How about you win the money just to help him out?
Bear in mind, in a later film, the bank fucking foreclosed on May. I know, I know Ben is still alive, but he's not earning anything at the moment. So yeah, so $3,000.
It doesn't really follow through on that plot line, does it?
It's one of those challenge things. Can you do like 3 minutes with the champion? So he designs this suit, which looks really cool, but the version of it he actually wears is quite basic.
Pajamas, basically.
Pajamas, yeah.
Yeah, pajamas and a balaclava.
Ben takes him into the library because that's where he says he's going.
Yeah.
And Ben tries to have a talk.
Sneaks across the road.
Ben tries to have a talk to him first. And this is where you get the
classic line.
Great power comes great responsibility. He basically tells him off for beating up Flash Thompson, and it's like, well, what was I supposed to do? And it's like, well, I'm kind of with you there. What were you meant to do? Particularly as you were encircled by everybody, you couldn't even run away.
Yeah, I think really the whole message is like, because obviously he's he's changing. I mean, the whole point of it is like, okay,
he's just
you're
meant to be
growing up.
showing. He's trying to show some support. That's all.
Yeah.
Actually, it's not. It's meant to be support first, lecture second.
It's just about sort of like, just think carefully about the direction you'll go. You potentially, because obviously now you're going to grow into the man you're going to be. So I want that to be coming from the right place. You know.
It's fine, and obviously Peters needs to be a twat here for what comes later.
And it's played rather well, because I can kind of like get that kid as like, I just want to get on. Oh, it's like, oh, Dad, come on, do you know what I mean? It's
figure it out. Stop trying to lecture me. You're not me. You don't know me, my life.
Just want to get on with things, and it's like, oh, I don't have time. I
don't think it's always, when you're a teenager, they always say teenagers think they know best, and I don't think it's always as blunt as that. I think it's not that you know best, you know different. Your parents are like, well, even older here, but your parents might be in their 40s or something by this point, or 50s or whatever. In this case, he's like in his 60s, and it's like you can't understand my experience because it was a different world when you were my age, and I want to make my own decisions and my own mistakes. It's not knowing better, it's just wanting to make your own way. That was certainly my attitude when I was younger. I didn't know better, but it came off like that because I just wanted to like figure it out.
It also is also like about when you're at that age where you are becoming to take on more responsibility, and you're kind of like hungry for it. You don't want to be sort of tied down to like your parents or whoever that have been over the years. So when those kind of interlinked, it kind of grates. So it's like, oh, just let me be. You know what I mean? Rather than like. But then you probably should.
With college and all that, I'm leaving home in a couple of months. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can't really be telling me what to do anymore. But yeah, he goes in. Cameo from Bruce Campbell here.
And Octavia Spencer.
Which one's that? I know what Octavia Spencer.
She's a sort of admissions
like.
lady as you go in.
Oh, was she? I don't think I'd ever noticed, to be honest.
And she looks no different. She looks
doesn't age.
She looks exactly
she looks
the same.
timeless.
Yeah.
Bruce doesn't look much different either. He's still quite glamorous.
I'll tell you that we'll get to the thing later on that's dated this film the most, and it ain't the effects.
Is it the fact that Macy Gray's a headline act?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. This film could have only been made in about a 6-month period.
It's one of those things, isn't it?
She was yesterday's news by the time the film came out.
This is it. It's one of those things that kind of, it does, place it. The film it's a very kind of very like now sort of movie as well, but very much of its time just because of the creative choices that are made. So, and some of the fashions as well are very kind of like late 90s, early 2000s. So.
Well, Macy Gray comes along in it, and of course, when Macy Gray came along in life, she was distinctive looking. She had a voice unlike anybody else.
Yeah, she had a really unique
Marge Simpson.
And the song, sorry?
Well, Marge Simpson.
I don't think Marge Simpson would have had such a big... Julie Kavner would not have had as big a hit with that song, I don't think.
They're really, really soulful, quite gravelly, but definitely distinctive.
I think everyone thought she was going to be an enduring big star, like her or hate her, and she was a total one-hit wonder. So it was a fair...
How about her album? It was good fun. I think I was probably the only
She had a hit album on top of that hit, but yeah, it was kind of like...
driven by that hit.
Driven by that one-hit wonder song over here. So.
And she was like really sort of like pushed heavily as well. So like so like, oh, what a find! It's like, next year no one gives a shit.
So she goes into the same category as people like Tamsin Archer and stuff. They lasted one song and that was it. She probably had a career after that. I'm talking about fame.
Yeah, I think her last album was 2018, 2019. So
yeah, I was going to say she's probably still working and still fairly successful, but she wouldn't be headlining something in Times Square.
No, plus this, I think this is probably one of the most highest-grossing films of 2002. I'm going to say. So this kind of really helped give her a boost in her career. So.
Well, yeah, boosted it massively. She didn't. She had a big hit before it.
It's fine.
This film was the first film to gross over 100 million in its opening weekend, and that was stunning at the time.
That was something back then.
I remember the figure coming out, and it was like 114 million, and I was like, "Fucking hell!" That was just mammoth. Yeah.
Especially post 9/11 as well. And on this series I've often spoken about the locations being characters in the movie. I think this film is undoubtedly that.
They added a scene in after 9/11, and it was just one of the most wrong-headed thing they did in the whole film. But we'll get to it.
Is that the thing where he gets the cutaways?
Mess with all of us.
Yeah, pretty much. So, but it just shows
was
like the
added
unity and
afterwards,
everybody
so-
pulling together after after a major tragedy. So it was now it looks a bit like
Looked shit at
but
the time, to be honest, Becca. It really
definitely.
did. It's like, the heart was in the right place, but it's like you're just pandering. Just don't.
This is but I'd say it meant well at the time, and I think
So
that's
he
that
wrestles-
was like the one sort of token thing that they really had to do to kind of get people together. So he's lost.
Randy Savage. Randy Savage didn't die
Oh
that.
yeah.
He has the cameo here, doesn't he?
He was nothing to me. I had to look up who he was afterwards.
Really?
I didn't even know he was a real.
I thought you'd be all over it.
What, wrestling?
Yeah, I don't know. For some reason I thought you might be
What,
a fan.
because it's in something like a boxing ring? No.
No, I just thought you might be a fan. I don't know. I just
No, Chris
randomly
is a
saw on
wrestling
social media.
fan.
I thought you might be a fan. But maybe
I
not.
must admit that inadvertently I've almost insulted Chris there because I've gone, wrestling? No!
Fuck off.
Well, I had
Bellend.
I had a brief period when I was really into it in my early 20s, but
I never liked it. First off, it was needlessly homoerotic. They were also.
It was all staged, wasn't it? It was all
the
staged.
trash talk. Yeah, that was the deal breaker, though. First off, if you're going to stand in a ring like that, punch each other. That's what I want to see, not fucking like cuddling.
No.
And the trash talk I always thought was ridiculous. I just thought it was so over the top.
Point of comedy moment.
And I mean, boxing can be pretty bad, but mainly it's not real. People
it's
would go,
all theatric, isn't it?
"Who'd you fancy to win this one?" I was like, "Well, if the script leaks, you can find out."
Yeah, you can find out.
well, yeah, I mean that's the whole point, though. It's like wrestling is basically a soap opera in spandex. That's basically what it is.
Isn't it? That's
And
not the fun of it.
that's why
We've
people
talked-
tune in.
We've talked a little bit online. Chris and I have talked a lot more online about offline about what the appeal of it was, because we did a summer review where we went quite early in the year for the first film. We covered like Fighting with My Family, and we talked on air about it, but we talked off air as well, because I'm quite open about the fact I used to look down my nose at it. Now I don't look down my nose at anyone or anything now, but I really wanted to know with an open mind what the appeal was, and Chris sort of sat and kind of talked to me about wrestling for a while and what the appeal was, and it's like, yeah, I get it, but I'll never feel it. So yeah, Randy Savage was absolutely nothing to me, but I would imagine he was quite a sizable cameo, wasn't he, Chris?
Oh yeah, he's like, he's obviously from the classic era of like Hulk Hogan and things like that.
Undertaker and all that lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's one of that, and plus he's just a memorable character, because how he is in the film is how he is on in the ring. He's like, oh yeah, it's very memorable, very kind of
basically Duff Man.
Pretty much. I mean, I can't say I'm accustomed to seeing him wrestle that often, so I can't see him. I don't know how generally good he was, but obviously he must have been good enough and memorable enough. And he's a lot of fun, as a character wrestler. I think that is what he is. Macho Man 97 is like, if you had a picture a stereotypical, like over the top wrestler, it would be him, really, wouldn't it?
Well, I mean, Hulk Hogan was in Rocky 3.
Yeah.
As like a little sort of thing at the start of the film, so it's not unlike that.
Bonesaw is ready.
Yeah, just as
like
Hulk
veins
Hogan
popping out everywhere.
Yeah, he
like...
played a different character with a large amount of himself in it, as I'm assuming he's done here.
Yeah.
So he announces himself to Bruce Campbell as the human spider. Bruce Campbell thinks it's lame and announces him as Spider-Man.
I mean, what I kind of like about when movies do wrestling is like it's like they follow the trajectory of like wrestling is kind of real. So you have these like big buff guys like seriously getting beat up.
Yeah.
It's like, well, that wouldn't happen. It'd be like, this would be more like UFC, wouldn't it, if that was the case?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, particularly a bit literally, because it becomes a cage match.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, the one thing I do know is wrestlers put themselves through it. They do hurt. They do hurt each other.
Yeah.
But obviously, there has to be limits, because it's pointless deciding on a script where I win and you knock me out in the first fucking 30 seconds because, like, you slammed into me too hard. Do you know what I mean? This is okay. But a sign of what's coming is, he says at one point, "Nice suit. Did your husband make it for you?" Now, leaving aside the fact you would not put that line in a film now, forgetting what is or isn't offensive about it, it's really fucking lame. And I just thought, like, that's this iteration of Spider-Man. There's no fucking wit in him at all.
Well, that's the only time he quips with, though, isn't it?
Yeah, he's mute most of the rest of the time.
Yeah, I mean, it does sound something like a Spider-Man kind of line, but at the same time, that's all he says.
We don't get quips and really until the second Garfield film in the opening sequence. Well, no, we get a bit in the first one as well, actually. So yeah, he basically wins. I don't think we need to say much more than that, do we? Then he goes back to the office to collect his. Is it 1,000 or 3,000? Some money anyway.
Yeah, he just gives him like $100, saying like, he didn't last the 3 minutes or whatever. See you later.
I don't know if it was meant to be 300, 1,000, 3,000 or what, but he's not given as much as he should. And he said, I need that money. And he said, I missed the part where that's my problem. Who is that actor? I recognise him. I'm wondering if I've seen him in NYPD Blue or something. What's the character called? Let me have a look. I need to go looking for him because I do... I've seen him in other things, but I think it was like TV. I have a feeling he might have been like the captain. Not the first one, but one of the captains in NYPD Blue. He came along in like a later series and became like one of the bosses. Okay. I'll see if I can find him in a minute. But anyway, so carry on. What's next?
And he gets robbed immediately afterwards by a guy with a distinguishing-looking hair. So we know.
Well, that's handy. So you just go, I think I recognise you.
Yeah.
Burned on his memory. Michael Rappaport, I think that is. Yeah, I've seen him in stuff as well. Yes, he was
Michael Papajohn.
I did sort of wonder.
Papajohn, not Rappaport. Michael Rappaport was somebody else entirely. NYPD Blue, he was Captain Clifford Bass in it. I remember him, yeah. He was in only about 11 episodes or so, right in the middle of its run. He's got quite a distinctive voice. It's a lot higher than you think it's going to be when he opens his mouth, but not comedically so. But he's done a load of different TV. Right up to, last thing he did was Masters of Sex. That was Michael Sheen. Okay, so so he's robbed, and just as Peter's leaving, the guy comes racing out of the office, and Peter steps out the way to let him by.
Yeah.
As the door closes, he just says thanks to him, and then the promoter says, "Why didn't you stop him?"
And instantly I thought, it's like, well, to be fair, he was armed. So
why didn't you stop him? Because like we're in the United States and he might have blown my fucking face off.
Well, he's got a gun and he could have well done that anyway. It's established. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like...
Well, in fact, yes, he must have a gun for obvious reasons. I think we see it here, but even if we didn't, it's like obvious he's got one.
It is. It's his hand. He's running with it. He's like, you know,
I thought he was, but like I can't quite remember. The fact is, even if we hadn't seen that, he goes on to shoot somebody in a minute, so he clearly had a gun.
Yeah.
Although that gets retconned in the third film, but there you go. Anyway. All right. So then what?
Then he goes like, "Oh, I missed that part. That's my problem." So then he goes, and then he goes to get picked up by Uncle Ben, and Uncle Ben's been shot.
There's a crowd around somebody. He can't see who it is to start with, and when he gets there, it's Ben on the floor dying.
This is played really well.
The pair of them are quite emotional because Ben is crying.
And that's the thing I thought was really good. It wasn't like the stereotypical Peter, remember what I said, great power, responsibility. He's literally just like...
Nor was it blind
Ben is,
terror.
He just says...
Nor was it... Yeah.
He's just says, like, Peter, and it looks absolutely scared, like someone who's dying. That's what I thought was really, really hard about it. It
was good. And it's the one time in this series where Tobey Maguire crying doesn't make me want to fucking vomit.
Yeah.
This is really well played. And so I can't remember what sets him onto the bad guy. Does he hear the police or something?
Yeah, something, because basically he starts chasing the sign. Yeah, so it would have been like a police radio he heard, and just would have.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a scene in I think one of the original trailers that they reanimated it into the full Spider-Man outfit to get a shot from this sequence. They sort of cheated on it a bit. But I like this because it's really clumsy and awkward, isn't it? He's sort of using these powers, but yeah. What do you think, Becca?
Yes, Dave, I would agree. It's in the very early stages of him becoming the heroic, friendly neighbourhood Spider-Man that we all know and love. Ian is right in that it's kind of perfectly orchestrated to make him like appear clumsy, and he's still very much honing his skills and honing his outfit and his uniform. as well, and the whole look of it. But he tries and his heart's there. But yeah, the scene is definitely engineered to kind of make him look. He's still in the very early stages of learning how to become a superhero. So
so he finds him, and obviously it's the he finds out it's the same guy. It's like, oh, instant karma.
Yeah.
Ain't that a bitch? And then Robert's like happy to like sort of shoot him, after like sort of pleading for his life and whatnot, and then trips himself up just to give, I always laugh at that sort of like, well, it kind of leaves a bit of conscience, because like, well, I didn't do it, he killed himself, but it's like, well,
it's quite dodgy though, isn't it? It's something like he's faced with like real peril.
Yeah, if I walk
on the street for the first time, so.
If I walk you back to the edge of a building and then you trip and fall off it by yourself, I was somewhat complicit. And that's the end of that. So Ben's killer's dead. Ben is dead. Where do we go from there?
Is it just me? Sorry to interject. Is it just me? But I kind of got this is going to sound really, really horrible and heartless, but I don't feel that way at all. I kind of got the impression that Ben's death was not as impactful as it should have been. I kind of feel it's quite obviously they make a lot of it, and because they made a big moment of from great power comes great responsibility, things like that. But I kind of feel that the later iterations that we see in the other films, I kind of carry more weight, carry more impact. I don't know. I just kind of felt like it didn't sort of treat it as if it was like, oh, Ben's dead, and that's fine. Obviously, I just kind of felt like it was played. It could have been given a more emotional heft.
Well, he has the single tear roll down the cheek after.
Well, yeah, this is it, like the one singular tear. And I kind of felt like, oh, that should be a bit more. I mean, it was a very sad scene, but I kind of feel like a little bit.
I don't feel it driving the mission in quite the same way as Batman's parents' death.
Yeah.
Is.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say, Chris?
I kind of feel like it should have been it should have been a bit more like that, but that might be, catastrophic to say. I don't know. So.
I mean, how much screen time have we got with Uncle Ben?
Not a lot.
Yeah.
Not a lot. We got a scene with. I think that could be part of the problem, but I don't know how you get round it, because if you had like half an hour of him and Aunt May just chatting to each other, you'd be a bit like, get on with it. But there's one scene of I've lost my job. He's just quite a stereotypical granddad figure, really, sort of guardian.
You have the stuff with him, like obviously, wait to paint the kitchen, or I suppose.
Yeah, it's quite stereotypical. At least when we get to, I mean, I've got issues with the way they do it, but when we get to the reboot, firstly, Martin Sheen is just immediately, it's Martin Sheen. But secondly, he's got like a playful sort of impishness to him. He's got you on his computer, that sort of thing. And so we see he comes off as more of a sort of jokey father figure to that Peter than this one does to this Peter.
It's kind of like parallel, really, to this Peter anyway, because obviously he's a very much like, this Uncle Ben's like a very stereotypical, like what everyone envisioned from the comics what Uncle Ben is like.
Yes,
and
it is a comic brought to life,
and it's it's like I think the only things is like this Peter is very much like someone who is basically spent the majority of his time around like two elderly people. So that kind of like he spends the majority of his time with that. Now that comes with like he's quite genuine and quite decent.
He's got old fashioned morals, as we would say it, which is a bit of a cliche, but there's something to that. Yeah.
So I think it's something like I think that's probably what it is like. But anyway, that's why he's probably not very contemporary with his kids, I should say. But anyway, so we move on. This is like where the Green Goblin comes and blows up the one that's the competition, should we say, randomly, and we have a weird transition with like everyone getting graduated, and Harry creeps on NJ. Literally just sees like.
I always felt they didn't leave him in school long enough.
Yeah.
I did find it very creepy in this scene.
I'm not fetishizing the idea of Peter Parker always has to be a schoolboy, but if you're going to start there, like, why have him leaving within like 40 minutes or whatever?
Yeah, they move fast.
Okay, so sorry, they all graduate. Yeah. One of the few things that's done better in the reboot. Just the whole. It's just.
Yeah, that's done a lot better, isn't it? I think.
Except for except for Emma Stone's speech in it, which is peak Ortsy and Kurtzman. But
that's by the by.
That's by the by. So we haven't mentioned. No, we haven't mentioned because he hasn't appeared yet. I was going to say about J.K. Simmons. We're not quite there yet.
No, we haven't quite got there. He appears quite late on, doesn't he? But I think when he does, even though it's a different characterization to what we see in the comics. But I still think he's brilliant.
I think kind of inspired by Ben's death, Peter then builds himself like $1 million suit.
Yeah, it is literally $1 million suit.
All the latex. Yeah.
It's
and then without this as well, Iron Man.
And then we have the superhero montage of
montage.
Yeah.
People literally talking to camera about like they're talking to reporters or something.
One of which is actually looks like it's Ground Zero.
Yeah, it does look a little bit. It does have that air about it. And there's a cheesy scene of like newspapers kind of like scrolling by in the background, and then you've got kind of, typical guy turns to camera, and you just think, oh god.
Yeah.
At the time, it was probably cool, but now you just think cringe.
He saved my kid. We're dead. All that kind of thing.
He's my baby.
Well, it gives him the right.
It's almost the people in the film talking to the audience saying, "We can't believe it either." Do you know what I mean? It's such a privilege to have these types of films at this point.
Yeah.
It's all right though. It's quite efficient. He gets out there and starts doing good.
And then we have with J. Jonah.
He likes his buskers, doesn't he, Sam Raimi?
He really does. He has quite a few. I think there's a couple that pop up in the sequel as well.
I don't think I read a review that didn't almost disproportionately talk about J. Jonah Jameson in this film. Because that's ripped from the pages of a comic book. No one in reality has their haircut, do they?
No.
Do you know what I mean?
He's a bit kind of like flat top madness, isn't he?
Yeah. I think the smart thing they played. He plays it with a hint of humour, because I don't know the comics that well, so I can't really say. He strikes me as someone who doesn't necessarily. He's a very stereotypical, press boss. He's like, he's very like shouty and
deadlines.
Yeah, but there's, this plays him with like this kind of like knows the ridiculous of his look, and a way he is. So he always he has a very, very sort of good comedic timing. With the way he's like constantly like sort of talking at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and then like when Peter comes in with a job, he's like tells him crap, go away, and then he's about to go away, goes, hey, sit down.
I'd pay for that.
yeah, that kind of thing.
He's actually, if you break it down and slow it down, he's actually in total control of what he's doing.
Yeah,
he can completely multitask. He's only got time for what he's got time for. His secretary there, Betty Brant, is Elizabeth Banks, who obviously went on to be a big star. She did audition to play Mary Jane. Can't see that really. I think she was pushing it on age at that point, because I think she'd have been late 20s by that point. Something like 28 or something when the film came out. But never gets much to do in the film. But obviously just worth mentioning Elizabeth Banks, because she went on to be a bigger star and a filmmaker as well. And obviously it's worth noting one of the sort of lackeys in the office, and it's the same for the sequels, is Ted Raimi, Sam Raimi's brother.
Come here.
Yeah, he always pops up in a Ted Raimi film.
Yeah, he does.
Bruce Campbell and Ted Raimi pop up.
They're pretty much the two guaranteed, really, aren't they?
Yeah.
So we obviously this is about Peter gets a job, and we got to Norman gets outed of the company because they just feel like, oh, we're cutting the ties, we're liquidating or something along those lines, aren't we?
They've got buyers interested.
Yeah.
They've accepted an offer, and they're trying to clear the decks, because you can't have like new bosses come in and the old boss is still there. They said they don't want a power struggle, and that's after he said, profits are up, we've got record stock market figures or stock prices, and so on. But they get rid of him, and he's like, "I'll get you next time, Gadget," sort of thing.
Yeah, it's a bit like that.
Furious.
Because before this, he's kind of like talking to himself, isn't he? He's like talking about like the goblins talking to him, in like sort of like it's got a split personality.
Yeah. Where he talks, it's his mouth is always moving, but like the mirror represents the goblin talking back at him.
And was this before Two Towers? Because I can't remember.
The Two Towers came out at the end of this year. I mean, they'd have filmed it all, don't forget, but The Two Towers came out December of this year.
Because I certainly thought of that when he's doing. I think it's the second. It's the big one where he's like, Goblin probably reveals himself to him, and he's talking himself in a mirror, and and he does it rather well.
Arguing with himself hadn't come out at this stage.
Yeah.
Or Gollum and Smeagol, I suppose, technically.
Yeah, it's a little bit like that.
And then we cut to Macy Gray and CGI balloons.
Just to interrupt, say, folks, we are covering Tolkien at some point. It's on the list. But anyway, and I'll look forward to that because I haven't covered them for ages.
I don't think I've seen the film since...
God, can you imagine how long the episodes are going to be, though?
Oh,
well,
we'll have to do it in parts. I think we'll have to split it up into parts.
Just for pure workload, we're going to have to pick a cut and stick with it. So we're either going to have to say, right, folks, we're doing the extended, or right, folks, we're doing the theatrical. Because I haven't got time to watch all of those amazing number of extras they did, and the extended version, and the theatrical version. I haven't got the time. So we'll have to just pick one and go for it.
I don't think it really matters, so to speak.
I think what you need to do probably is watch the extended and be aware of what's not in the theatrical. That's probably the best way.
I might have to go a bit more general in our talk through the film, I think.
Yeah. Try and say, well, at this point, obviously, it does branch because that's not in the... The only one I think it hurts is The Two Towers, because I think the films, just very quickly, my memory is the Tolkien films sort of declined in a straight line. In that, I think Fellowship is actually the best film they made. But that's in the theatrical versions. I think The Two Towers really benefits from the extra stuff. It really does. The Two Towers is a much better film in its extended version. I was quite bored by the theatrical version. And Return of the King just doesn't need it because it's too long already. And then you just throw all that extra shit on. It's about 50 minutes extra. It's just too long.
It's nice to have the Krista Saruman death scene.
That's true, yes.
Just for completeness.
It's quite brutal as well.
Yeah.
In a PG-13 way. So, they're all in the city now. Harry is flat sharing with Peter. And she's working as a waitress, isn't she? And dating.
At a cocktail bar.
Working.
When I met you.
Yeah. Obviously, Harry's dating her.
Yeah, they split. She split with Flash Thompson literally at the graduation.
Every time I mention Flash, I must go, oh.
Yeah. I just think of like bathroom cleaner.
Yeah, unfortunately, it took however many decades to come up with that joke.
So yeah, so we the world's being like painted quite nicely but quite broadly, and we get some action sequences of Spider-Man sort of posing for the camera, and it's really rubbery, the CG. He's fighting someone who's bouncing and springing, and it doesn't look right at all. It's the weakest CG in the film. Then what?
So we have the
Macy Gray thing.
Yeah, Macy Gray thing with the CGI party with the balloons and all.
This is the most stylized part of the film. It goes really primary color here, doesn't it? And that building never looks like it's in real New York. It looks like, soundstage and green screen. And I don't think the effects are bad.
But they're supposed to be in Times Square, aren't they? And I'm like trying to think, where's that in Times Square?
It isn't. It's kind of it isn't, obviously.
Yeah.
But not obviously. I don't mean to sound insulting to you there. I just mean I think the obvious point becomes if you can't place it, it's not there because you know New York better than I do. And I don't know. I thought it was the one thing when we get to the first Garfield film, decidedly not the second one, is it was the one film that Spider-Man's ever done, or one film they've ever made with the character, where you get a sense of scale, where New York is massive, and at times Spider-Man is this little fucking speck.
Yeah, sort of dwarfed.
Here he's always very big in frame, and that's very comic book.
I thought the same.
Basically, the board are there. They've told Harry normally he's got 30 days to resign. He's not been invited to this event, the World Parade or whatever it's called, headlined by Macy Gray, I don't know what parade this is mimicking. What parade is it?
It's a made-up one, I
Mace-
think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's basically like Unity Day or something. But I wonder if it's meant to be like the
Yeah,
Macy's,
but what's that parade?
Macy's
We get all the floats.
parade.
But anyway, it doesn't matter. Yeah, the Green Goblin attacks it,
Yeah, so he kills out the rest of the board.
kills the rest of the board with this sort of pumpkin-shaped bomb that is straight out the comic books. I like the. I don't know how you would have done it. I did see make up an alternative version of what he could have looked like in this film. I don't know if they could have made it look good, but do we like the Goblins get up in this? It's a bit Power Rangery, isn't it?
Well, it depends on like, well, what do you want to go with? Like, do you want him to wear? Is he wears like a rubber mask or something a bit more tactical and military or military-esque, or you just do away the concept of a goblin kind of get up anyway. The only other way you could go is like what they do in the Garfield ones, which like is like a mutation type sort of get up.
Yeah.
I'm
looking at the original mask now, and it's pretty awful. That I don't know that they would have. Neither would have looked good. Put it that way.
Yeah, I think the only way you'd yeah, I don't think there's way you sort of get around that really, unless you make the goblin such a madman that he would wear like a goblin mask.
I do like the idea of a mutation. I think the best thing would have been to try and get like a flavour of the comic book, bit like they did with the goblin in the reboot.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's just like a compromise or something you'd have to like weigh the pros and cons with, and also what suits the actual world of which, the universe of the movie itself. The tone. You could just go full out like along those lines, just like
it's never been one of the better aspects of
no
this incarnation.
I suppose you could just like do away the whole concept of Goblin wearing like a goblin mask and just have it like just make it all just tactical.
Make it a bit like the new Goblin in the third film, I suppose. I don't know. It's okay, but it's tempting to look at it and say that's dated, but actually it didn't look great at the time, to be honest. I think everyone was a bit like, can sort of see why you've gone this way, but we're not sure we like this.
I've got a fun fact about his costume coming up later on.
Okay, we'll stop banging on about that then, because we don't want to step on that one. Peter saves, or Spider-Man saves some kid who is frozen to the spot.
Yeah.
And then he saves Mary Jane before she falls off the balcony.
And swings her to a place of safety, which I thought, that's in John Wick 2, that.
Yeah, hold on a minute.
That's the top of the what's that? What's the name of that place called?
I don't know. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, Winston.
Yeah, no, I know what you're on about, but I can't remember what the building. Oh, you mean the Continental?
Yeah, Continental. That's what I was thinking of. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I thought you meant in real life.
No. Yeah, I think that place is near Wall Street.
I mean, well, the actual Continental building is the Flatiron, but I'm not. But I don't know that the roof garden is.
Yeah, the roof garden is actually near Wall Street as well, I think. But
all right.
Okay.
All right. So she's suddenly like, "Ooh, who's that guy?" And Parry's not been very nice or very helpful to her.
Yeah, he's getting a bit like jealous because, like, obviously he won't stop talking about I'm gonna say Superman there, Spider-Man. He's such a wonderful guy, even though like you know nothing about him.
He's just pulled you out from somewhere. That would be like, mind you, a lot of women do, I suppose, but that'd be like, I don't know, going on about a fireman for like weeks afterwards. So they saved you, but it was just...
I mean, to be fair, you would be kind of pissed off then, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
If you're Harry.
Yeah, and of course there's another sequence following up later, the braless stiff nipple sequence.
Yes.
Which is what anyone thinks of when they see this scene. The upside down kiss.
Yeah.
Which,
yeah, which is iconic.
Rain machines with water going right up his nostrils. Yeah, he saves her for some rapists, basically, or something like that. And
some very cartoon rapists.
And she's like, here are my breasts. And then he appears upside down and she sucks him off. No, that's the porn parody, sorry. She kisses him.
An upside down blowjob. Yeah, also, Yeah, so Norman convinces himself
I'm actually guessing because I've not seen the porn parody.
it'll be along those lines,
but it
won't
has
it?
to be, doesn't it? It has to be an upside down blowjob. If it's not that, what else would it be? Anyway, if you've seen the Spider-Man porn parody, write to us and expect us to talk at gmail.com.
The Goblin decides, like, I know, well, why don't we get him to join us for reasons I'm not entirely sure.
And we can kill and shit. It's like, this is shit. This is shit.
So the Goblin has Jameson, which Jameson doesn't give up Parker because he's... I don't know.
This could have been... This is them two talking on the roof could be like... It's the sort of thing kids playing with two action figures would come up with.
But it is the big question that I think, right? So, Goblin, like, sort of, basically, has got Spider-Man. So he doesn't sort of pull his mask off to find out who he is. Doesn't just kill him, because that would just be easier anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, he sort of keeps...
Just offers him a job of indeterminate
Think about
goals.
it, and he's just like thinking, hang on, why do you think he's going to accept? What benefit is it to you anyway? And...
I mean, we've never established what your goals are. I mean, I don't think you have goals. I think you've just been driven insane by the serum. But you're with it enough to know that to take out the business guys. But I don't know. I don't know if it is. You've raised an interesting point with Gollum and Smeagol. I don't know what you think, Becca, but the Goblin isn't Norman per se, is it?
No, it does. It did obviously with that film. In the book, obviously read for the screen, that sort of thing as well. It did now remind me very much of that kind of Gollum Smeagol, Smeagol Deagle scene. But I think it's played really well actually. For me, it's always difficult. I feel bad because I do have a problem because like very often these comic book villains are often kind of there's like an experiment gone wrong or an accident or something, or they just lose their mind essentially. But you really have to be careful how you portray that on screen, especially now when we are more sensitive to these things as perhaps we were in 2002.
To conflating mental health with flat out madness and evil. Well,
exactly. This is you have to be very careful. But here, it's not saying it's okay, but it was been within the realms of comic book fantasy. So that kind of, it's the same with Bond. For example, there's a degree of like comic book violence, and you can kind of get away with it also just because it is in such a fantastical environment. But I remember kind of being quite impressed with this scene when I saw it at the cinema. He does a fantastic performance whatever he does. I haven't seen him in a bad film, and if he is in a bad film, he does okay out of it.
Willem Dafoe.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And you can kind of, he plays both roles really convincingly, even just with like a smile or with a certain expression on his face. He sort of plays the dual sides of him, really convincingly.
Would you say he and J.K. Simmons are the two absolute standout bits of casting in this film?
Personally, I would. I mean, my highlight would probably be like him and J.K. Simmons definitely. But then I'm a big fan of Garfield later on, so I will speak highly of him when we come to see him later on. But yeah, I think for me, definitely Willem Dafoe was the highlight. We spoke a bit about his costume. I think it's quite cool. But obviously, having grown up with Power Rangers and those kind of Sentai shows in the 90s, it is a little bit like that. It's very much influenced that way. And I would prefer this one to kind of like the later iterations that we'll see later on. But yeah, I do get what you mean about the whole like Gollum Smeagol thing. I can definitely see that. Looking back on this scene now,
Smeagol and Gollum are two different people, really, aren't they? Smeagol is tortured by Gollum, really. Pretty much, yeah. Well,
Gollum's basically he's a drug addict, essentially, isn't he? So, and basically Gollum's kind of like what he's sort of become because of his addiction, unfortunately. I think it was Smeagol and then his brother Deagle. That's from what I can remember reading the books. But yeah, I could definitely see. Obviously now, I think it's kind of really made that role his own. But yeah, I can see the two. I can see the similar. I can't even speak now. I can see the similarities and differences, between them. But no, it's very spooky, very kind of eerie scene. But I think it's done quite well. I wouldn't know how sensitive it would be, but yeah. I just think that nowadays you have to be, very careful in presenting something like that. Yeah. But I think the way we did it, and obviously using the trope of the mirror, for example, it's a well-worn trope of doing that. You see that for pretty much, all cinema.
the get out clause with that is though, it's like, well, it's the formula that's brought it on, and like with
Well, exactly. Yeah,
and
it's
with
the comic book movie.
Smeagol, it's the magic ring that corrupts that. You know what I mean? So there are other elements other than like real elements. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
I don't think
It's handled really well. It's a standout scene. So.
I don't think it's never wrong. I don't think it's always wrong, rather, to have a sort of mental condition lead to heinous acts. I think where it does bother me is, I mean, in real life, where you get somebody goes into a movie theater and shoots it up in America or something, and it's immediately put down to mental illness. And I think, well, for those people out there who are suffering with mental health conditions, it's an insult, and it actually is so counterproductive, because people get very wary of mental health conditions, and most of them are no threat to anybody. You know, the only person who suffers is the person with the condition and those that love them. But so where do we go from there then? So it's let's be partners, and he's like, no.
Yeah, but they basically have like the stuff with the mugger one, and then we have like a burning building.
Yeah, he goes into mute again. No humour, no nothing. Goes in and he stages the fire. The goblin just wants his answer, ends up cutting his arm.
Yeah.
And then it's Thanksgiving. And all I remember...
it's an odd scene, isn't it?
Well, it's a bit like scratch and sniff now, because the problem is, not long after the film came out, I was reading interviews with the cast, and one of them, and I think it was Willem Dafoe, said how much that turkey stank, because they were filming all day. And under hot lights, the turkey started to turn and stuff like that. So every time I see this scene... I just kind of... I can almost smell the food poisoning.
Oh, God.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The way is Norman talks about Mary Jane very audibly to Harry is quite uncomfortable to watch.
Yeah, because obviously the events were like, meeting this girl that Harry keeps talking about.
Yeah.
And yeah, part of that's meant to be like the Goblin, I think. Like,
yeah, Shagger and Lever, basically. She's not in your league.
Even though he's not even like spent any time with her at all to even know anything about her.
No.
But yeah, it's really...
And actually, even if she was just a waitress, bear in mind they're all sort of college age at this point. We're not talking about somebody who might, will never be anything, definitely. Even if you did judge that sort of thing. So it's a bit of a strange sequence, and the line between the Goblin and and Norman is actually blurring, isn't it? And he seems to be sort of fighting it at different points.
But there's a weird sort of like thing we start to suspect Peter
because of the cut on the arm.
Because they hear something in his bedroom. They go up and he's like not there.
Well, he's on the ceiling, isn't he, or just outside, or whatever it is. But he spotted the cut on his arm at the dinner table. Yeah, there was blood on the floor, wasn't there, as well, from where he came in. That was it. And when he does arrive,
I think that's a really tense scene. So you can see obviously it's a big CGI droplet, but I just think that's a really tense scene. I was like, are they going to discover? Because I think that's part of the tension and the excitement as well. It's like, is the hero's identity going to be revealed? I found that scene quite tense. I know it's quite hokey by today's standards.
The only bit I find hokey is the narrowing of the eyes. It's the one bit.
Yeah, that's a little bit like very cartoony.
It's the suspicious dog that Homer.
Yeah, Homer Simpson's suspicious dog.
That's the Mel Gibson episode.
Narrowing his eyes.
Yeah. So he knows that Peter is Spider-Man now.
Yeah.
And it attacks Aunt May.
Yeah, which is an odd thing. 'Cause she's like that, praying before she goes to bed, and he just like explodes half the top part of the house, which probably would kill most people anyway. Definitely like the old lady. And he's there like telling her to finish the prayer, which is like an old joint going, finish it.
Well, I was actually sort of giving thanks, and I'm not quite sure that's
deliver us from evil.
Now at the hospital.
Yeah.
And Peter and Aunt May sort of are there. Mm-hmm. She's telling Peter she's got a crush on Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Which is just like odd. isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's just so clearly just like, you're just hero facturating though, aren't you? It's like, you just...
Yeah. It doesn't do the character any favours, actually.
No.
But whatever.
But anyway, yeah, so... Harry sort of is talking with Norman, and I think she's broken up with him at this point, hasn't she? And he's like, well, you're right about MJ. So he's kind of sort of more leaning towards his father now.
Yeah.
I
always thought MJ needed to be a bit more playful as well. I mean,
Yeah.
she does use that tiger, because first time he ever sees her in the comic books, it's like, you hit the jackpot, tiger. So she uses the tiger thing. Raimi knows enough to know to put that in.
Yeah.
But she's quite a miserable, damaged character in this. And I'm not saying she... I don't know. Mary Jane is always remember, this was a difficult topic at the time, because they cast Mary Jane in the reboot, and then scenes were cut. And it was Shailene Woodley. And she took a lot of misogyny on social media because, Mary Jane's meant to be beautiful and she isn't. And actually, whilst that cruelty was absolutely unwarranted, and I don't think the actress is ugly in the slightest, she wasn't the bombshell that, Mary Jane's meant to be. So there was something in it just expressed badly. And I'm a bit on the fence about Kirsten Dunst because she's a fairly attractive woman.
Yeah, I mean the Shailene Woodley thing. I'm very interested to see how that would have played, even though I can't see that being in the movie. But then again, I'm just curious to see how they would have played it, because it could have played it fine.
She was still very adolescent at that point in her look as well. It's just, that's not the characterization we've ever had of Mary Jane Watson.
They probably would have gone for a bit of the cool chick.
A bit like MJ in the Marvel version.
Yeah.
Slightly offbeat.
Yeah. But
there's room for other interpretations, but bear in mind this is kind of a very classic interpretation of Spider-Man we've got here. And Kirsten Dunst is an attractive woman. I don't know that I've got a problem with her casting, but her characterization, I don't see anything in the character that's going to draw in a Peter Parker apart from an infatuation.
Yeah.
And across the arc of the 3 films, it isn't just an infatuation. So what is it he's responding to?
The problem here, I find with MJ is, in these films, is they've kind of tried to combine MJ with Gwen Stacy, and you ended up with neither. Because she's basically like the girl he's fallen in love at school and then continues on with.
Yeah.
There's no distinction with. I mean, Gwen Stacy's done a lot better in the Garfield ones.
Yes.
But,
that's the strongest bit of the Garfield ones.
Yeah.
Those two. Yeah.
But but Mary Jane, as I felt, has never really had because she's meant to be completely she's meant to be like a model, isn't she? That kind of thing.
Yes,
it's like self-confident.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, this hence why she meets him later on.
That's the
after
word,
Gwen.
self-confident. I couldn't describe it properly. It's self-confidence.
Yeah.
It's not arrogance, but she knows what she is. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But hence the opening line, because
you've hit the jackpot, tiger.
Yeah, it's like he meets him on a blind date that's settled by someone. I don't know the specifics, but that's like the big reveal. He opens the door and she's like there thinking, you just hit the jackpot, tiger, knowing that she's I'm a fucking model.
Yeah. It never plays obnoxious, even though it fucking sounds it there when we're discussing it.
Yeah.
But all right. So where do we go from there? Where are we up to? The attack on so we got the Spider-Man thing.
Aunt May and Peter. We talk about, is Dad an angel? Like, what fucking kid says that?
Oh gosh, yeah, that's a very cringy line.
Yeah. And then he realised, oh my god, he's going to go after people I care about. Everyone knows you love MJ.
Yeah, so he's kidnapped her.
Yeah.
This is kind of a mix-up. There's a bit of Gwen Stacy in this as well, but he goes to get it's a bunch of kids on a school trip late at night. So that's odd.
That's the problem with the Goblin character, because the Goblin character he doesn't really have any motives, but
not really. No.
But his motives tend to sort of just to be all about Spider-Man. So it's just a reflection of what Spider-Man is. So it's like you're trying to be a hero. Well, hero choose.
That would work better if you developed him over time as well.
Yeah.
Because Spider-Man's only been Spider-Man briefly at this point. You know, the idea that this is big rivalry. But it's an okay sequence where he has to dive, save the kids, and save Mary Jane at the same time. It's fresh in this film. It's going to get less fresh, him having to save Mary Jane every 2 fucking minutes. But it's all right at this point. But yeah, you get the Goblin pelted with debris and rubbish and stuff, and it's... You mess with
all of us. You mess with all of us. Yeah,
I mean... It didn't play at the time.
It
might have done in New York, to be fair, which is all that matters, really.
It plays because New York is everyone's quite proud of being from New York, but what kind of the kind of interesting thing is about New York is it's actually quite everyone hates each other there pretty much. Everyone and I find that kind of like
it's not the warmest place I've ever been, to be fair, particularly in that country.
It's but it's odd when you look at like the social makeups of it. Everyone from every different demographic, every sort of like side, whatever that is, like religious, ethnicity, or anything else you care to imagine. Everyone fucking hates someone else for whatever reason. So it's kind of funny how we New Yorkers all unite. It's like you don't really know, do you?
No.
Do you know what I mean? It's not the reality, but yeah. It's always, but then I suppose it's just like everything else. It's like, but if you slag off New York, they would all like be like, we New Yorkers are like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, they made a thing of New York, in the awards season of that year, and the Oscars had a bit of a New York theme, and Woody Allen turned up. He didn't even turn up when he won one, so he turned up to speak, and and all that kind of thing. And that's fine. I think that's great. The film industry paying, but actually they've forced something into the film that's not that good. But okay, not to worry. Well, what about then? Are we into the final sequence?
It won't be the last time it happens in the series as well.
No, so we'll see that again. Unfortunately,
there's a later film where they might as well have masturbated over the flag. But anyway,
well, it's awkward, isn't it? I mean, because it is. Just because of the time that this film was made, it was unfortunately we had that really tragic event. I just kind of struggled to say anything negative about just because of what happened really. And they also did what they thought was right at the time.
I'm not even beginning.
But I'm not saying you're doing that at all. Definitely, I'm saying obviously now looking back on it, you can kind of think, or was it the right decision to make? But I just think they have to kind of do what they do at the time.
It looks like a crowbarred in reshoot, and that's because it is.
Well, exactly. It does look like that, but as I say, it's kind of like a nice touch that they can do, but it's difficult. It's tough.
So what then? So Goblin grabs Spider-Man and they fight in a building.
They fight in a room. Your main climax is like some random place.
Basically he ends up killing himself. He pretends to be Norman, and while he's getting the sort of glider ready to sort of spear Spider-Man, Spider-Man's spider sense kicks in and he jumps out the way. And he kills himself in a way that will be totally autopsy worthy in the third film, if you're a qualified butler.
Yes, because you spear yourself. That looks clearly like web shooters.
Yeah, you clearly speared yourself there. It's like, how does that work? It just flew at him. How have you got any idea he did it?
Yeah, it says don't tell Harry. Why not? Why wouldn't you?
He takes the corpse home. And Harry sees him, vows revenge, and at the funeral, which is the same place Ben is buried, he's
place
going
where
on
everyone
about,
in movies is buried in New York.
I'm going to kill Spider-Man. I'm going to get revenge, or he killed him, or whatever. And it's like, I don't know. There were multiple times in this series like Spider-Man could have put the record straight, even if it's not in his Peter guise. Mary Jane's there as well, sees him at Ben's grave, confesses that she loves him, kisses him. And he says, no, I can't. I'm away. And then she's like, ooh, I recognise that kiss, which is never alluded to again.
Yeah, I just...
The implication
at the time, they made a big thing of it, didn't they? Like, it was sorry to use that word again, Dave, but it was like an iconic scene, and they're sort of comparing it to, I don't know, like Jack and Rose in Titanic or something, for example, but it's just like, it's a stunt, it is what it is. It's not that amazing. Get over it.
And then it ends that thing that happened at the beginning, which we all forgot about by this point. It's like, so who am I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you didn't need to answer that question. We've just watched 2 hours of it. And that's it. I'm Spider-Man. And then I remember back in the day listening to the commentary on this film. and I think it was Sam Raimi did a commentary. It may have been in an interview separately, but I think it was on a commentary where they said the guidance from the very start from Sam was that this last sequence has to be the best CG in the film, so you really ache to see like where it goes next. And I think they've achieved that. The final sort of swinging around the city from Spider-Man, that closes out. The film is the best we see in the film. And that's it. Spider-Man, done. Massive grossing film. Huge, this is Spider-Man for a generation of kids, and I get that. And I don't want to knock it. Tobey Maguire's the deal breaker. Apart from that, it's just a very straight and simple film, which is fine for a start off and in an era where we didn't get the sort of comic book films that felt like comic books. It's a bit of a cliche now. It's like a comic book come to life. Well, a lot of them are to be. Yeah, but a lot of them are now. But there you go. I like it. I don't love it. I wish almost anybody else in the world was playing Spider-Man. Although, having said that, I've never been a big Jake Gyllenhaal fan, and he nearly plays him in the second one and didn't. I just think Jake Gyllenhaal has a face that looks like it's been sort of hit repeatedly by a frying pan in a Tom and Jerry cartoon. But there you go. Decent enough. What do you think?
So yeah, when we going to see this film first time at the cinema back in the day, I was pretty much hyped by it and quite enjoyed it. But this time around, I was looking at my watch thinking, oh my god, when's it going to end? I think we've been spoiled by Marvel. Obviously, there have been huge advances in the way of certainly CGI and visual effects and everything. I think for me, in a nutshell, high points would probably be Willem Dafoe, J.K. Simmons definitely, and a little bit James Franco. I quite rate him. I think he's all right. But yeah, the low points for me would probably be some cringe-worthy script, concepts and ideas and choices, and some CGI, which the majority of it doesn't. There's a lot that holds up, but there's also a lot that doesn't. And perhaps a score that perhaps isn't as memorable as it maybe should be. But as I say, it was okay. It's probably one of the first major kind of superhero movies of the modern era. As you said at the top of the show, there's kind of really, obviously with this and the Hulk, the X-Men movies, it did open the floodgates, as you said. It did kind of start off that more popular ball rolling, and then obviously Marvel kind of really picked it up. About 10 years ago, and ran with it really, and developed the modern superhero movie as we now know it. But to be honest, I'm really looking forward to next week's film more than I was this one, so that should tell you quite a lot.
Yeah, I mean, next week is often regarded as like one of the best superhero movies
ever.
Yeah, so I'll be interested to see how that holds up. As my thoughts for this film, it's fine. It's of its time, and that comes with all the flaws and benefits that goes with it. Obviously standouts are Willem Dafoe and J. Jonah Jameson. I have crap with names now. I just forget all the names. What's his name?
J.K. Simmons.
J.K. Simmons, yeah. Because his name's similar, like J.K. Simmons, like J. Jonah, yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to cast Jamiroquai in this.
No.
J.K.
Or J.K. Rowling, that would have been no choice at the time, wouldn't it?
No, avoid.
Some random author who's just like come out with a few kids' books. It's fine. It's actually quite well paced. I think that's one of the things it gets right.
I think that's the biggest difference in the experience you and Becca have had this time.
Yeah, I think if I could sort of highlight why it was popular at the time or why people enjoyed it, I think it actually highlights how pacing, in terms of and being quite efficient with your storytelling. Though on paper this isn't a particularly well crafted story, but
no.
Then again, what blockbuster films were at this time anyway? So it's of itself.
Well, Attack of the Clones was the same year. That was brilliant.
Yeah.
Right.
But anyway, that said, I don't know anything about this film.
No, quite embarrassing, really. I mean, I saw it at the time. I've seen it since. We've talked about it for 2 hours. A new series as well. And not only that, Spider-Man's been on the schedule for ages. I mean, we got no excuse, Chris. We knew this was coming. Why didn't we get prepared?
I mean, I barely watched the film. I can't even remember it.
Well, it had a guy catching flies in webs, I think, because that's what spiders do.
Oh, okay.
And he shot webs out of his arse, I think, because that's what spiders do.
Out of his nose.
Yeah. So, if only one of our number was better prepared. Possibly the one of us that enjoyed it least. What do you think, Becca?
Why not? Why not? I thought this week, should I do spider facts? But no, because I don't like spiders. So I'll just do normal facts about the film, as usual. If there's an animal involved, I might do animal facts. But I thought, no, I don't want to look at any more photos of spondles. Thank you very much.
Oh, Planet of the Apes is up next, so we can...
Prefer for ape facts, definitely. And I feel bad for Charlie, obviously. He's got a couple of tarantulas as pets, which are beautiful. But
they're not your thing. You don't wish them any harm.
I mean, I'd be surprised. No disrespect to people who actually own spiders. I know they consider them beautiful, but beautiful is not a word I can ever concept. Interesting, yes. Beautiful.
Yeah, definitely.
Interesting is not beautiful, but I mean,
just no.
you don't wish them any harm. You don't wish them any harm. I think Charlie would understand like phobias of anything.
No, definitely.
So having a bit of phobia and
anything like,
you don't wish him any harm with them. So what?
No.
I'm not into spiders either.
But
they're not something I'd ever want.
Too creepy, so it was alright.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, anyway, so fun fact number one. Obviously, there are many directors attached to this movie back in the day. James Cameron actually came close to making up his own version. He created, I think, probably like 60-page treatment or scriptman, I think it was called.
That would have been for Canon, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Oh no, yeah. Yeah, it was.
Possibly. The thing is, he wanted to get Michael Bain for it.
He did. I'm so glad that didn't happen.
I've actually read that script or that story.
It was meant to be quite good though. It's kind of well received, and Stan Lee said yes, that's fine. You know, he signed off on it and approved it and everything. But obviously, as we know, we didn't happen, and he ended up making True Lies, and then also went to Titanic and greater things. So,
well, no one would bet against James Cameron, to be fair.
Well, no, this is it. Exactly. Yeah. That would have been a very different film.
Yeah, it would.
I've
forgotten all about
that treatment, but yeah, I need to see if I can read that. It would be interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, second fun fact: there's a Bond link to this movie, as Willem Dafoe also played a Bond villain. He provided the voice and likeness of the baddie in
Everything or Nothing.
Everything or Nothing. That was at 2004.
I forgot when you said he played a Bond villain. I was like, shit, is there a film I've not seen? As soon as you said video game, yes, everything.
He kind of did.
Basically, Brosnan's unofficial fifth film.
Pretty much, yeah. It's a really good game, but certainly within the community, it's kind of rated quite highly. I know that obviously other games are up.
GoldenEye was like quite groundbreaking for a first-person shooter, but in terms of plot and everything or Nothing is the one that tends to be most highly spoken of.
Yeah, definitely.
And obviously, because the last Brosnan film was absolute shit, and those that like Brosnan always felt that he was shortchanged by that, and kind of felt that Everything or Nothing was like a better way for him.
Yeah, as an official game film, definitely.
Yeah.
He would have been a good choice for the role he played in that game anyway. So that would have.
And had
an evil Russian
leads. I've had other good cast members as well, but I think they tried to tie it to like Zorin, for example, from View to a Kill, and so they had sort of like personal and professional links as well. So there's a bit of a throwback to that as well, which is pretty cool, I think.
Yeah.
Kind of ties it into the Bond universe a little bit more. Another fun fact: apparently he did 90% of his own stunts, and the actual costume that he wore had lots of different pieces. I think over 500 different pieces, and apparently it took him like over half an hour to actually get into it, to climb into it, and to put it on. So it was quite complex and quite difficult. So that's probably why he looks a little bit like a Power Ranger. Fun fact number 4: the CGI scenes were completed by Island pioneer John Dykstra, or Dykstra, I can't pronounce his name. He obviously realised that some of the shots would have to be fully CGI and couldn't be done in camera using stunt work. So the shots and the work that he came up with were seen as quite convincing at the time, and he thought, maybe I could try and fool the studio executives. So he got together with producer Laura Ziskin and decided to see if they could fool Chair of Columbia, Amy Pascal, and Chair of Sony. And lo and behold, they did. They were like, "Oh yeah, what did you think of Tobey Maguire's work?" And they're like, "Oh, actually, no, it's CGI," and they were fooled. So fun fact number 5, obviously, as we were talking during the film as well, the World Trade Center was cut from marketing post 9/11. The first trailer of this film, which came out in the US in summer 2001, heavily featured the Twin Towers. But obviously after this tragedy, the footage was recalled by the studio. I think there are a couple of teaser posters as well, which also bore this imagery of the reflection in his eye. I think some of them are now like collector's items. So, like, if you see a rare, they're quite rare now, but they often pop up on eBay, as being collector's items. So, and that's my 5 non-spidery facts about Spider-Man.
All I would add is you see Laura Ziskin as a producer on this series, and she passed away at the relatively young age of 61.
Yeah, it's very sad.
About 9 years after this came out. Just worth pointing out.
Really
You'll see her
sad.
name on these films. She also produced Pretty Woman. There'll be other things on there, but those are the ones that stick in my mind. She was she died of breast cancer, but yeah.
Also, I think Nicolas Cage was going to be Norman Osborn as well.
He was
I never
what,
knew
sorry?
that.
Nicolas
He was
Cage.
gonna-
Nicolas Cage was going to play Norman Osborn as well. I think he was originally signed up to do it,
I'm
but
kind
then
of pleased he didn't. A lot of people like,
That would have been crazy.
a
Oh
lot
my
of
God.
people like Nicolas Cage, and he has done some great films along with all the Drek, but something about him again. I think he's got that face that looks like it's been pre-slapped. I don't I get on my tits. I don't like him very much.
Another unique look about him, hasn't he? So.
Yeah. Anyway, as for social media, you can find me at the Pasty Kid 1976 on Twitter.
you can find all the old episodes on cinematronics.co.uk.
And you can find us on Twitter at Expect Us to Talk, and generally across social media. If you type in Do Expect Us to Talk, you can find us there on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, also on Spotify, Stitcher, and Podbean, and wherever you download your podcasts from. But yeah, wherever you find us, don't forget to rate us, review us, like us, and share us. Thank you.
Okay, next time Sam Raimi will be off the leash and he will make the Spider-Man film I think he really wanted to make, which means Becca.
Do Expect Us to Talk will return with Spider-Man 2.